I'm Liz Stokes. This is Danny Desai. And just before Lucy gets into the nitty-gritties of what you guys are going to be talking about, we just wanted to jump up and let everyone know what YGN, Young Guns Network, is. So this is our panel. We've been doing these panels for 3 years, but outside of panels and conferences, we are a networking group for under 30s, loosely under 30s. And we basically essentially exist to try and help people make that next step in their career. We're completely run by volunteers who have full-time jobs outside the industry. We're all under 30-ish ourselves as well. I think that probably is everything that we are. Is there anything more? I mean, if anybody wants to know anything more about what we do, we're based in London, but always happy to talk about what we do. So give us a shout.
Yeah, and just wanted to say, follow us online, Twitter, Instagram, or YGN. And also head to our site if you want to join the network. It's younggunsnetwork.co.uk. You can sign up for free. And yeah, loads of goodness there. So please join.
Hello. Testing. Okay, we're in business. Hi everyone, and thanks for coming. The purpose of this session is to have a look at the rise of mobile messaging and messaging apps as marketing platforms for musicians. I was reading recently in TechCrunch that between them, just WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger alone actually see 60 billion messages a day, which is 3 times as much as SMS. And we're also seeing an increasing trend of social media marketing kind of going private and towards messaging. So this panel is going to explore what opportunities that presents for marketing and for monetization for musicians, for artists and labels and managers. So I've got a great panel here today. I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves each briefly and tell everyone what you do.
Thanks. Thank you, Lucy. I'm Sally Burtt-Jones. I work as a consultant for Viber, looking at partnerships across all genres, including music. So by no means an expert in the music industry, but we've done quite a bit over the last 14 months.
And I'm Darren Sequeira. I work at Facebook looking after the entertainment team in the UK and international markets. We work across movie, theatrical launches, music and broadcast.
Hello, I'm Danny Desai. I work as a digital marketing manager at Virgin EMI Records.
Cool. So first question, I wanted to ask you guys what you see as the benefits of marketing via messaging apps, and how do you see that working kind of as beneficial for both the musicians and for the fans? So I don't know who anyone can jump in. I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, basically I would say that it's really relevant and it's intrinsic to our culture at the moment, which marries up with music and labels and what a musician wants to have, what an artist wants to have in their locker. They want to be relevant. They want to be part of culture. Music is such a part of culture. So right now, WhatsApp is now a verb. You WhatsApp someone. So it's really relevant. And for artists to be in that space, it's really positive thing. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about being, in that space and marketing via that space. It's one thing I'll say.
Maybe I'll jump in and so it's probably worth saying how we look at not just Messenger, but any of the platforms and products that we launch. And there's sort of a phased approach to it. So the first thing is designing around audiences, so what audiences want to do. And as some of the stats that Lucy mentioned there show that people are spending a huge amount of time and actually driving a lot of volume on Messenger apps. And in the US, actually, some audiences have overtaken in time spent on Messenger versus social media applications as well. So to Danny's point, it's developing very quickly. So we start there and we design around what the audience wants to do. Then we look at the data related to that audience, so finding out more about them, demographics, their behaviours, so that we can make not only the tool better, but also when it comes to bringing brands and businesses to that particular product, we do a better job of relating them to that particular product. And so the setup of this session was a lot around sort of messenger campaigns. I'm not sure we're actually quite there yet on a major scale, although Sally's got some really good examples that she's seen recently on messenger campaigns. But what we are doing is starting to integrate businesses with messenger. And some examples of that are around, big businesses, different categories, from airlines to FMCG brands to artists and musicians, connecting directly with their fans. And that's the opportunity that we're seeing and that we're developing currently.
So, Darren, just to go into that a little bit more detail maybe. So, you mentioned that Messenger is becoming more business focused. I mean, what kind of opportunities do you see specifically coming up there for sort of artists, musicians, or maybe there are examples of campaigns that you've already seen being run that you can talk about, just to sort of explain how the more business focus can be applied to music?
Yeah. So the ability to communicate directly with the fan base sounds like a huge opportunity. It's also quite a challenge as well, because we've just launched a couple of bits of functionality. One is that you can switch messenger services on for a Facebook page. So you can start to trigger that type of dialogue between artist and fan from the page, which is quite an established place for artists to sort of represent themselves, their music, and their own sort of personal brand as an artist. And then also we've offered that opportunity on websites as well. So there's an incredible wealth of opportunity for artists to start speaking quite directly to fans. Then the challenge comes is, are they ready for it? Because switch that on, and incidentally we will put a badge on responsiveness once an artist or a brand kind of switches on Messenger, and we'll actually give them kind of 4 different grades of how responsive they are. And let me tell you, switch it on for fans and they're going to want to hear directly back. So the challenge is going to be how to sort of curate and manage that conversation.
Okay, great. And Sally, what do you see as the benefits for both artists and for fans of mobile messaging?
So I guess overall, I think the statistic is 75% of people that own a smartphone use some kind of OTT app. So if you want to be where people are, then you need to be working with messaging apps. So I think for me, there's 2 things. One is retention. So messaging apps keep people coming back time and time again all throughout the day. I think 9 times a day is the average amount of time people go back to a messaging app, which sounds ridiculous. And also the rate of growth. So we've talked about kind of the oversaturation of the market. Could that ever happen? And, whilst more and more people are picking up apps, the rate of growth is phenomenal. So I think it's a really important place to be. From a fan perspective, I think it's an opportunity to get really close to an artist. So where communication can be in a messaging app much more casual than it might be on a normal social network, it can feel a lot more intimate and a lot more personal. And from an artist's perspective, I guess it's audience.
And I'm interested to know how you guys think mobile messaging campaigns can sort of fit as part of an overall marketing campaign strategy for an artist. For example, if you're running a mobile messaging campaign, how does that fit with other activity that you're running on socials and maybe other digital platforms? Where does it sit within the kind of digital marketing space for music?
Well, I think it's the opportunity to do the one-to-one kind of marketing, basically, or not marketing, conversation essentially is the word. So you're doing this kind of, if you do social media, it's one to many, and that's the nature of it. But things with messaging apps, even though it's one to many, it feels like you're having a conversation directly with the artist, and with the development of bots and stuff like that, you can have a actual true one-to-one kind of experience as well. So I think you have to tailor your approach in a totally different way, and your marketing kind of activity is going to be totally different to how you would do stuff on socials, and you're going to be having that conversation, and a conversation with the artist, like Sally was saying, is just so valuable. If you think about the value of getting tweeted by your favorite artist to like certain fan audiences, like the value of getting a message from artists via messaging app, it's crazy, and that these things become milestones for these fans, and like life goals, so this is the opportunity, really, I would say.
So for more direct connections, basically, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I might offer up So you're after examples, and that, you know, there are some quite interesting ones. I'll maybe talk about two very briefly. One is Absolute Vodka in South American markets, and on the subject of sort of integrating with, if you like, more traditional campaigns. You know, the beverage market has been out there creating events, you know, interacting with their consumers, and trying to create that connectivity between quite a sort of distant sort of brand and actually the people, you know, the consumers actually consuming it. And so they ran a campaign of that nature, which, you know, I don't need to go into in any detail because I think everyone would be familiar around what that campaign would probably look like. But the interesting layer of messenger that they added on, just for the, you know, a certain segment of their audience that they knew was on Messenger, was to basically build a small messenger database of fans that they could discuss a live gig event that they were having. And they took it one step further, so it wasn't just notifying them via Messenger and essentially running a marketing campaign via Messenger. What the fans had to do was actually enter into a dialogue with a virtual bouncer and convince them why they should gain entry to the event. You know, no doubt an experience we've all had, probably are going to have maybe this evening if we can't get in somewhere, if you're not on the list, you know, whatever. So this was just a really interesting way.
Don't you know who I am?
Exactly, I mean, and that was probably the stock response, you know, don't you know who I am? But they had to be creative, and that was the beauty of Messenger. You know, even social media would struggle to have that kind of immediacy to the conversation and create that kind of awareness and link for those particular consumers for that particular brand.
Okay, great. Sally?
I guess I just wanted to add to that I think working with a messaging app can either form kind of the cornerstone or like the main part of a campaign. So something that sprang to mind was the Paul McCartney sound stickers. Maybe not that relevant for this audience, but quite a nice music example. So a range of stickers where once they were sent, you got a kind of a snippet of a song with them as well, which is really lovely. So that kind of formed, I guess, the ecosystem of the campaign formed around those stickers. So within PR, across other social media channels, and it was the kind of the base of it. But I also think, you know, messaging app as almost like a second screen can work really well with a campaign which is about something else. So, you know, you could form like a, you know, backstage conversation, for example, on a messaging app, which could only kind of add to and amplify something that you were doing elsewhere. So I think it can play both parts really well.
Okay, interesting. And Danny, you were talking there about tailoring, you know, campaign for audience and things. So from your perspective as a marketer, kind of which apps and platforms do you think are sort of have the most value for music marketing campaigns and for artists? What are you seeing in the campaigns that you're working on, or maybe campaigns that, you know, your peers are working on? What's the value kind of? Where are you best spending your time, basically? Which apps and platforms should artists be spending their time on in terms of marketing on mobile, do you think?
I would say it's case by case. It depends on what works for the artist and where their audience is. And also, like, if the artist is directly involved and it's not some third party doing it, which is always great, and when the artist is involved like that, it's what they like doing and what they're native to. I think whatever you do decide to run with, you want the conversation to be native to that platform and really sit well in that platform. So the way you use WhatsApp with your friends, why not market like that with someone? Why not have a conversation? So, you know, you're having a party, album launch party, or, do you know what I mean, the announcement of the album. Why not have a WhatsApp conversation where you're talking about it and you drop the location of some rave, I don't know, something like that on the day, and make it, you know, you're invading a space which is reserved for your friends, and you don't want anything to seem like an imposter. So it's really important for whatever these ideas are and wherever you're spending your time, for it to seem quite native to the thing. So I would think case by case, but whatever you do, it has to feel quite at home in that environment, I think.
That's so important, isn't it? You've got to have whatever you're doing marketing-wise, it's got to be a really authentic kind of conversation between the artist and the audience. And I think especially more so with messaging than even with social media, it's so important that it all comes as well from the artist, and you've got the artist buy-in, and it's very much them kind of driving the conversation with their audience. And speaking of which, you raised another good point there, kind of about finding your audience and being where they are. So this is a question for all of you again. How do you think artists can go about kind of identifying a relevant target audience on these apps? Because that's not always so easy as kind of it is on mainstream social networks.
Do you want me to go first, because it's quite challenging with Viber? Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why messaging apps have been so successful is it's incredibly easy to get set up. So with Viber, for example, all you need to do is add your phone number and your name and authenticate, and you're ready to go. What that now presents as a challenge, while it's a great user experience, is from a brand or a partner's perspective, we don't necessarily have access to as much data about that person as we would like to. So we can make some assumptions about them, and we can use Facebook Connect data, thanks Darren, where possible. But ultimately it is, we're relying on kind of external research pieces. It is quite difficult.
Can I ask, where do you kind of hope that will go in the future for Viber specifically? Kind of, do you have particular sort of data targeting features that you're hoping to roll out? I know you may not be able to talk about specifics, but...
It's a really interesting question. So, our user base is growing really fast. So I think we're at 760 million users now, which is great. But obviously without that data, it's not as valuable as it could be. So the business at the moment is really kind of turning towards becoming a much more partner-focused business than a user-focused business. I think we'll talk about that more later. But yeah, for now, we are looking into pieces of research and opportunities when people open the app, for example, to collect more data. But we don't want to do it at the detriment to the rate of growth that we're seeing. So it's quite a it's in conversation, I guess, a lot at the moment.
You've got to find that tricky balance, haven't you, between sort of benefiting the user, as you said, but also having that business perspective and focus. Yeah. Darren, I think you have quite a lot to say on this question as well, don't you?
Over the years, targeting has been quite a hot topic for us, and still remains. The challenge is not, for us, I guess, is not accessing and having the data at a scale that's kind of interesting to various different brands, artists, and anyone wanting to access it. It's how we use it. And we've wrestled with that always with user experience and the sanctity of users' data at the heart. And even in some sort of recent times, we've actually taken away some targeting capabilities. So, for example, you used to be able to target against specific names, not a specific person, but a group of people with a certain name. And what we found was that feedback on that type of advertising was just too personal, and within an ad-formatted space in newsfeed. Identified by audiences as being a space that they did not want to see that type of advertising targeted in that way. And we had to remove that. That's a negative user experience for us, and we don't want to progress that, even if it can be very useful for certain advertisers that want to, advertise to people with birthdays on a certain day, use their name. There's all sorts of ways that you could potentially use that type of targeting. When it comes to Messenger, we tread carefully, and again, back to that kind of three-phase process of how we develop products. We're in that phase now of trying to understand what will be the most valid way to use the data that we have, the 1.65 billion real people globally. How can that relate to Messenger, and how can we use that type of data? And we won't just open the floodgates regardless of how useful it could be for certain marketeers, and it wouldn't actually in the medium to long term be of value to marketeers, because they would be associated with a negative experience related to their brand, and that would very quickly have a detrimental effect. So I think having worked through it now for a number of years with Facebook, then Instagram, and now we come to Messenger, I think within the industry and within audiences as well, there's a recognition that that we have to tread carefully in the way that we use targeting. That being said, there's a really interesting opportunity in integrating the approach with Facebook and Instagram and an approach on Messenger to bring more of a commercial opportunity to messaging services, for sure. And you'll see more on that this year and next.
Interesting. And will there be a future possibility to kind of integrate your data targeting with advertising on Facebook? For example, you obviously have some of the most granular data targeting when it comes to running ads on Facebook, compared to any other platform, which I love as a marketer myself. Could artists potentially in the future go onto Messenger and say, yes, I want to target this specific kind of demographic, or people in these location, or people who are fans of this certain artist, or whatever it might be, and kind of send them, maybe a sponsored message, something like that. Is that the kind of feature that you see coming?
Put me on the spot here now, aren't you?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Afraid I am.
So I'll express it this way. We've quite successfully ported Facebook's data and continue to do so into Instagram. Okay? Different use case of Instagram, it's essentially a photo app that now does a lot of video, and a slightly different way that you sign up to and follow people versus Facebook, which is about discovering what's important to you from friends and family. However, what we've steadily progressed on that journey of integrating that data through. So there are opportunities to do that with some of the other platforms that we have. That's what I'd say on that.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let you off the hook now. Danny, from your perspective, from a marketing perspective, kind of, if you're working with an artist to put together a mobile messaging campaign, how would you go about trying to sort of find the right audience on different messaging platforms?
I mean, Darren's got all the data, so I can't really do anything about that. I'm joking. But no, I mean, identifying, I guess the way we would do it is we would call it out on socials and try and, marry up the kind of data, if it was that rave idea that I was saying, is that we would just kind of put a form there and kind of collect that data and then get them involved. I think I'm totally with Darren on the fact that, we love these environments because they are what they are. And as soon as you get, if you start to put too much targeting in them, or start targeting them in the wrong way, then they go south quickly, really, really quickly. So I think it's about getting that strategy, whatever it is, right. And in the meantime, it's us just being a creative, whether, doing a more manual process. It's like a really exciting time with these messaging apps. There's opportunity there for us to just do manual things and just manually set up things and do really exclusive things before they become a bit more wider scaled.
Cool. I think we're now getting into quite an interesting area about kind of data and privacy, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges. So we've identified one key challenge so far, which is how do you find your target audience for messaging campaigns, but also then how do you track, your results is another area as well. Kind of, are there trackability problems, I think, with messaging campaigns at the moment? Because I don't see, as a marketer myself, kind of the features I'd like to see yet, to be able to run a messaging campaign and then get really detailed stats back. So, I wanted to ask you guys from a platform perspective, kind of what you're working on in terms of analytics, perhaps messaging campaigns, and again, Danny, what you think kind of, well, actually, what all of you think the sort of the metrics are as well by which we should be measuring the success of energy messaging campaign. Is it reach? Is it engagement? Is it impressions? Is it maybe a more direct conversion, for example, click through to your website or to sign up to a mailing list or to purchase a record? What should we be driving people to do? How can we measure that? How do we measure success with a messaging campaign?
So I think we're quite lucky at Viber that actually, although our targeting capabilities aren't that great at the moment, apart from geographical ones, we actually have quite good analytics that we can feed back, not to say that we couldn't do better. We encourage anyone that publishes content on our platform to use Bitly. Okay. We're not able to track links ourselves, but with obviously a lot of conversation about dark social and a lot of that coming from messaging apps, we're really fascinated to know how those links are performing within our app. So our partners share that data with us. But we're also, in terms of the main publishing platform we have, able to report on a weekly basis for all of our partners on how many new followers they've received, how many people have unfollowed, what kind of media has been published, and how many likes that media has created for people. Okay. And then we work really closely with them using that data to support them with a good content strategy. Okay. So we can definitely improve, but I think generally from the feedback I get from partners, we're quite kind of far ahead of some of the other messaging apps and what we can provide.
Okay, so artists can see the results of their campaign, then, like I said, use that to refine their marketing strategy moving forward.
Definitely. I think it's really important for anyone experimenting with a messaging app to define their objectives beforehand. You know, we can make recommendations on how we could support, you know, to drive to a website or get video views or whatever the objective is, but ultimately the KPI needs to come from the client.
Yeah, exactly. They need to know their goals first and what they're using the campaign to drive. Yeah. Okay.
We're spending quite a lot of time on this right now, and we've been through a bit of a journey in the sense that in the early years on Facebook particularly, we were measured on what you might call social metrics, so, you know, engagement or likes, comments, shares, and, you know, we put those metrics there, we put the buttons there, you know, we encouraged people to interact with content, and we gave data off the back of it, right? So why wouldn't you look to measure that? What we found out subsequently as Facebook got bigger and the reach opportunity got a lot more sizable was that a very low percentage, in fact, under 1% of people who engage for most categories, it's probably a little bit higher for entertainment categories and for music and for film and things like that, but still in the low single digits, would actually go on and make a purchase. With a number of different methodologies for measuring that, which I won't go into at this time on a sunny Thursday, so you can just trust me on that, okay? But it was quite an epiphany to us in the sense that it helps us go back to the music industry and say, look, you know, what is it that we're trying to do here? And in all cases, it's about driving awareness of a particular, you know, established artist or upcoming artist, about driving intent to buy the single, buy the album, go to the show, and then ultimately about driving the outcome, which is sort of, you know, making that purchase of the album, the ticket, or the stream, of course, which has come through. You don't need another presentation on that, I'm sure. And so we're now just starting to get to those outcomes. And a couple of really interesting sort of anecdotal pieces of data around it. So we launched a product called Music Stories recently, which could actually sit on Messenger probably quite comfortably right now. It's just a very visually compelling way of bringing a Spotify link or an iTunes Music link to Facebook newsfeed. And we've seen a significant incremental uplift in the response to and the streams driven from that, just by creating a more visually compelling unit and one that will allow people to actually stream part of the track in feed before they then go to Spotify, iTunes Music to then go and listen to that piece of music. So that's getting us closer to the actual outcomes. And when you look at it in that way, likes, comments, shares, engagements, these types of things are nice to have brand health uplift moments, you know, for an artist, you know, but they're not crucial to driving the business outcome of sales.
Can I ask, will we be able to set up messaging campaigns in future where we'll be, as Sally mentioned, it's really important to have, I think, campaign objectives, and I know that, you know, Facebook advertising is very kind of objective driven, so will it be possible in the future to say, okay, I want to set up a messaging campaign and my objective is, you know, to say drive click-throughs to my album or, you know, that kind of thing? Will that be possible on Facebook, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, sort of related to your question in asking what's going to happen in the future with the crystal ball, if we look at what we've managed so far on the platforms that have the insights, have the ad delivery, then we've done just that. Yeah, we've sort of journeyed from a social metrics to a media metrics to an objectives-based approach. And yeah, you can go onto the Facebook ad tool, I don't know who here, you know, books Facebook campaigns or Instagram campaigns, and you can choose reach, you can choose, you know, conversions to sales, you know, and actually go after those types of objectives. And we're getting better at, you know, efficiently providing those. But the ambition is absolutely to drive what's important for the industry.
Yeah, and then those are the analytics that you'll then feed back. Yeah, okay. Danny?
I think it's all about having a conversation and having that online, and as opposed to your conversion. So because at the end of the day, I think we're finding more and more, so if we're chasing a chart position or something like that, you go and you can put money into Facebook and stuff like that, but it's not going to move the needle like loads. You have to be doing some like cool content. You have to be doing all of this stuff in a wider level from a lot, give it lead time and be really pushing that to actually see some conversation online. And conversation is what's going to drive your streams. Conversation is what's going to drive your sales. I think that's the metric, and so it's hard to, obviously there's track links that we have and there's stuff like that, but ultimately it is hard to measure these things, especially in chat apps and stuff like that. But all we do know is, we have stats like, I think the Radium 1 study is that 70% of link referrals are in these apps. So like these chat apps. So if that's the case, then there's no doubt that then there should be some kind of marketing there and a presence there,
Okay, yeah, which raises another interesting point about sort of data and the value of data, because I think it's, as a marketer or a label or a manager, I think from any, if you're using any third-party platform, it's often a bit of a challenge as to how you kind of go about collecting data from your marketing activity. And obviously you don't own that data in the way you would with a website or a mailing list. But Danny, you're talking there about, the important bit actually being, the exposure and the reach that you get. We hear and we read stories about brands paying crazy amounts of money to kind of get on Snapchat, actually, on their Discover channels and platforms like that, because they really feel that the investment is worth it in terms of the demographic and the audience that they're able to reach. So, do we think that's more important? Is it about like I said, having that conversation and reaching that audience, or should as an industry, the music industry and the tech industry, we're working closely together to kind of help artists own their data and own their relationship with the audience a bit more? What do you guys think?
So basically, in regards to I find Snapchat quite interesting. I think that it's hard in Snapchat to, not a lot of things, you might not be able to market to people that easily, because people might not see that stuff. I don't know how many people pay attention to this Discover bit that much and advertising there. But where the opportunity really is that the artists have to do it off their own back and have to kind of relate to their audiences like that. I just think it's hard in that space to, hard to be seen, and it is about that reach and awareness and just having some presence. But you have to think about these sponsored things, and you have to be smart. Snapchat, it's not cheap, to get your stuff in there, and you have to be careful with where you're spending your money in there, and really you're better served just doing organic content and having organic plans for chat apps, definitely. But yeah, I think that we're all about awareness and conversation and stuff like that over having a palpable thing there. You just have to do that and trust and feel the heat from something, I think.
Okay.
I think you have to accept the fact that you're going to have to work with other platforms more and more in the future. And the best thing that you can do is to try and build a really solid, engaged community on that platform who feel comfortable to share data with you. It might take some time, but we have some fairly big communities now with partners on Viber, and there would be no problem with a partner requesting email addresses or information from that community that they've built, because even though it's on our platform, essentially it belongs to them. So I think as long as, as an industry, messaging apps are kind of open to allowing people to do that. I don't know what Facebook's rules on this is, but, certainly, for the benefit of the partner, we would absolutely let people collect data.
Great.
Darren?
Well, I suppose we want our cake and eat it. We'd love to, have huge reach campaigns and, have thousands of artists having, one-to-one conversations with their fans, right? Because we've got the tools there to do both those things. The reality is having, naming no names, work with some artists that, they're on our platforms and others, but you actually speak to the artists themselves. Are they actually interested in spending much time curating. No, they want to go and make music. That's what they do, right? And they're not all necessarily, die-hard social media, messenger users, although they recognise that there's a great opportunity to broadcast their sound to their fans. So I think we kind of have to be sort of realistic about what was within our capabilities, and of course the diversification of what audiences are doing, using different apps, new apps coming out. I think that will continue on because there's an interest, particularly from young audiences, to try the new. So that will continue. So it's going to create quite a complex scenario. So we go back to what it is that they're out there to do, and regardless of whether they're on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat in any big way themselves or not, then there's a job to be done when launching music content, right, to get that to as many people, the relevant people as possible. On the flip side, we've just seen some really fun, particularly from kind of young bands that are on Messenger, just really fun, personalised content. Backstage, on the way to the gig, out of the gig, interacting with fans. Facebook Live is, another, not Messenger, but very immediate and personalised, and has grown very, very quickly. So there's clearly a trend there in the type of behaviour, type of interaction that has helped that particular use case kind of grow very quickly. So we absolutely want to encourage that, curate that, and for the artists where it's relevant, have them do as much of that as possible. And hence the reason why, we're bringing out tools like Facebook Live to, really help any band, big or small, broadcast themselves in a really compelling way, which is a live moment, which, incidentally, isn't far off in a way what Snapchat offers in a way, to young audiences.
Okay. We've been talking about, these apps providing the opportunity for much more direct connections with fans. And Danny, you were touching on the fact earlier that it's kind of all about driving this conversation and this space kind of actually coming from a place where, you tend to interact with your fans, and it's a more personal kind of space. So just sticking with the question of data for a minute, one thing that fascinates me is how mobile marketing is going to go in terms of where do you draw the line, with privacy, and how do you stop marketing campaigns kind of boiling over into spam, because I think this is something that concerns me a bit, that, this space could actually potentially get saturated like, social networks have, or like email has, where you actually get a lot of spam and things like that. So, where do you guys think, how do you think we can sort of find the right balance between sort of marketing and targeting the right kind of content to people that they are going to want to receive versus, take it too far and kind of spamming their kind of personal messaging space with services they don't want?
I think that goes back to what Danny was saying earlier on about having a native experience. So ensuring that the communication that you're creating and having with users of a messaging app doesn't feel like that. Making it creative, making it fun, making it entertaining so that it would be something that people would like to receive. And then also from a privacy perspective, just making sure people have signed up for it. Yeah. That, you're not just saying, oh, here's a bunch of 14 to 17-year-olds, we're going to send them this message because they might be interested in this artist. That there's a communication that happens before that, which means that 100% sure that that person is going to be interested in that communication. Otherwise, it could all go horribly wrong.
Yeah, so you've got to have that kind of opt-in process, really, for your audience and make sure that, like I said, they actually have signed up to receive the marketing communications that we're going to send.
Yeah. I think it's essential.
Yeah, sorry, it's probably good for me to say something, but basically, I just think as long as they're looking after Facebook and WhatsApp, these guys are kind of limiting it, and it might sound like weird for me to say that, but it's good. The limitation is good because you don't want there to be imposters in the space, and you don't want it to be too much spam. And I think it is about, like Sally said, just creating really exciting content there and just letting that kind of do the talking. You don't want to end up getting to a space where it starts to get too saturated with spam and stuff. This is the beauty of these apps. This is why people are on them. is to get that like unencumbered experience, and that is the preservation of that, whether it be they're at Facebook and WhatsApp, them doing that through Messenger, or it's also that, I mean, coming back to artists and labels, you have to do stuff that you feel your audience will take on in that platform, native to the platform, but you just have to think about your audience a lot more in such a personal environment, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I can simply agree with that, and also say we can help quite a lot with that challenge because we've got endless checks, balances, policies to ensure that we're constantly tweaking, editing, the advertising opportunity to be as valuable, useful as possible. And let me tell you, I don't need to tell you, you've probably seen it, you may have even fed back yourself, our audiences don't like what they see. They're the first to tell you, absolutely the first to tell you. And we watch that very closely and, continue to monitor. And so that's how we've been able to grow all of the Messenger and other platforms that we've talked about pretty exponentially, whilst also actually growing the advertising marketing opportunity at the same time. It's just kind of continuing to work at that fine balance.
Okay. But I mean, if someone's using Facebook and they say they're using Messenger and they've got, threads from friends, and then they've got news from the latest news from the artists they want to hear from, and then they've got also things like chatbots and kind of customer service channels, which I've read are coming to Facebook in the same way that the big Asian messaging apps like Line and WeChat have, where you can kind of order taxis or flowers or, basically run your entire life and make payments and everything like that from the app. I mean, if Messenger kind of goes down that route, or if any messaging app is kind of going down that route, then where do you think the space is for music marketing? This is the thing that slightly worries me, is it actually going to get a bit crowded out? Is there going to be too much noise, do you think, with sort of customer service offerings and channels kind of versus marketing?
Yeah, I think as with a lot of the functionality, certainly on our platforms and indeed on other social platforms, other sites even, most of it is opt-in, and so you start from that standpoint, as well as flag, in whatever way it is, as ads or sponsored, and just be clear about that. What we're seeing is that from the early years when I was around, sort of helping build this stuff up, there was a real anxiety over what we were doing, because it's even possible to put advertising in a news feed which is so personalised, and here we are, and it's working pretty well. We've now got young audiences, hesitate to use that word millennial, which is a little bit of a marketing buzzword, but and they're way younger than me, and incidentally I was pretty offended by the under 30s thing, because I'm so far off under 30s, it's depressing. But these young audiences are coming through, and they've grown up with these apps and the awareness of them, and then they've become old enough to start using them. So their awareness of the value exchange is actually pretty sophisticated versus some of the, mine and older generations that really see it as a challenge and intrusion and a way of advertising that they don't understand. So when these people start to come into our industries, into the music industry, into the tech industry, we're going to see it accelerate even more, because these are the people that are going to be creating the technologies of the future.
Yeah. Okay. And we've talked, you've all mentioned the importance of being creative when you're marketing via these messaging apps. And there's been quite a lot of articles and news in the industry about just kind of how important the native stars of these apps have become. And Danny, you were talking earlier about the importance of messaging in popular culture. And you see these native stars now, they've kind of made their name on Vine and on Instagram and Snapchat and Instagram and whatever it is. And I have to say, I think it's a trend that's kind of passed some musicians by, in a sense. I think musicians are not always actually as creative as we might like them to be with these kind of apps, and they've kind of been left a little bit behind, for example, by the likes of YouTubers, where there's now a whole native generation of stars who are kind of taking on a whole new importance in popular culture for kids, because these kids are kind of growing up and they're identifying with these stars and not so much with the musicians. So I wanted to ask whether you guys think that there are sort of lessons that musicians can learn from the stars of, say, comedy or film or whatever it is, who've kind of grown up on these apps and gained huge followings.
What I would say is that there's a few, and I would say like being consistent is really important with these kind of things. Like I watched a documentary, a BBC one, and it was touching on like these YouTubers and how they produce content, and they've created this kind of thing where they're uploading content, I would say weekly, and there's a moment around, we all focus around Netflix where we can just watch whenever we want, but there is definitely a more traditional kind of thing going on where you're waiting to see the new episode of, I don't know, a series or something. Now these kids are like on the edge of their seat waiting for the next bit of content from this person. And I really do believe it's not just the quality of the content, it's the consistency is really important. And I think with musicians, if you're consistently uploading some good content weekly or something like that, I reckon you'll start to grow things quite quickly. I would say that's an important point. And then also like being scientific with your approach is really important. I've like met some people that are doing some cool stuff and they're unmanaged, but they've got some decent numbers, and it's crazy. They're really young and they've got this really scientific approach. They're looking at their analytics. They're going into their YouTube and checking retention rates and stuff like that. That's crucial. You have to analyze your approach. You have to treat it like a business, even though it looks like a little kid having fun. Or, for music brands, it might just be a musician or whatever. But you have to think of it that scientifically, because these guys in other areas that makeup tutorials or wherever you're building these massive audiences, that's what they're doing, and I would say that's really important to do. Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Darren?
Yeah. I mean, it's another aspect of frightening disruption. Whereas the rock kids were the cool kids, right? Now the sort of the brand kids are the cool kids, and the distribution that they're able to command, and earnings, as I'm sure you've kind of read, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per week. Some of these people. Is really just quite outrageous and disruptive. There's no other way to look at it. So, I think, is the recommendation that bands sort of jump on this and try and behave in this way? Probably not, because it's back to that point around authenticity and representing yourself in what it is that you do. And if you're a band, with a certain style of music, and your authentic voice is to, gig as hard as anything and tour and talk music and, maybe be a bit crazy with your other band members, that's the voice that you should express. And I think, I think we will see on this subject of young audiences sort of coming through and sort of changing the world. I think you will start to see a couple of bands, as you say, who know their data, know exactly how to use the different tools at their disposal, come through and be, the next big thing, as well as, have a really good sound, and maybe, sort of blend those two together. You can just assume that's going to happen, because whenever there's a disruption, there's always another level that takes it, to an even further degree. So I think we can expect that, and I don't think bands need to worry. They just need to continue doing what they're doing good music, right? That's why we're here.
I agree with everything these guys have said. There's one example. So we brought a Snapchat star from Miami, a girl called Yes Jules, to Ibiza actually in September last year with an unsigned band from Leeds. It was an interesting few days. But one thing I think that really helped the band was spending some time with Jules and her friends and watching how incredible she is at social media. That's how she got famous. She's really, really good at it. And actually, we saw quite a big difference in the content they were publishing on Viber and their other social media platforms after that experience, because instead of their social presence feeling a bit more kind of curated and a bit more kind of everything had to be quite on brand, even though they were unsigned. After that experience with Jules, they were kind of recording like stupid videos in the car of them like singing in harmony to cover songs, which were amazing. Just like dicking around at home, everything just became a bit more personal. Yeah. I agree that it's not for everybody. You know, artists now get given a suite of social media tools to use, and they can't do everything. So it's important to help them identify which of those tools is the most important for them and their brand. But yeah, I think they can learn a lot about just being more natural from those kind of people.
Yeah, I totally agree. Quick time check. Are we out of time, or do we have time for more questions?
We can take one more question.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, the last question I want to ask you guys will be, where do you see the future of mobile messaging campaigns and mobile marketing going, and kind of what would you like to see that landscape looking like and developing into in the future in terms of sort of marketing opportunities for music?
Might go last.
Yep.
What I would say is that, you know, this is what I touched on earlier with the one-to-one kind of experience. I think that's a really exciting thing, and having this thing, like, you know, me and Darren were just talking about the Uber launching. Basically, Facebook Messenger has a thing in the US right now where you can click on an address that your friend has sent you, and you can just and then you can Uber it, but with one click, and then the car's outside, kind of thing. So music being part of that experience in that way, like in that kind of, you know, I'm feeling like this. I want to listen to a song. Can you just tell me a song to listen to on a wider level? That would be great. And just having that personalized, granular experience, I think that's where we need to be focusing. And also the artist to fan experience of just being able to talk, and how can we use that. I think they're the exciting bits.
So kind of personalization on a mass scale, is it? Yeah. Okay, interesting. Darren, what do you think?
Yeah, so I've got one on this, and I want this to happen. So Danny's covered the artists. So I already told you about my age, so I've already got over that embarrassment. But in the mid-90s, when I was buying a lot of records, the experience of going to a record shop was just really, beautiful. You go into the record shop. If it was drum and bass, which is what I was listening to, it was a little bit of a moody environment, but they warmed up and started talking to you about records and suggesting things. My favourite record shop used to keep stuff aside for me, white labels, and I get a little bit ahead of the other DJs. That whole experience has been lost a little bit. We've gained a lot in the digital ecosystem, but we've lost that. And in my view, there could be a real opportunity to bring back a messenger, personalised record shop owner to everyone to discuss their music buys with.
That's a great idea. I would love that. Yeah, please can you build that at Facebook?
We'll try and do that.
Okay, great, good.
For me, we've talked a bit about creativity. I think there are a lot of sort of technological developments in the chat app space at the moment. So the rise of bots, for example, which is really exciting and can enable artists to have those one-to-one communications on a kind of low resource and low cost basis, which is great. But I'd like to see something really creative coming out of the music industry to work with messaging apps. So whether that's visually around more artists working on sticker packs where like we spoke with Paul McCartney earlier on, I don't think his stickers were particularly beautiful, but to do something really creative with stickers and sound, more live music streaming, just to make, I guess, working on audio and visual nature a bit more. I don't know what it looks like yet, but that's the kind of direction I'd like to head in.
Okay, brilliant. All right, I think we are out of time, so I just want to say thank you very much to the panel for some really great insights and questions and challenges for the mobile marketing landscape ahead. Thank you, guys.